Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recap. So, June 2025, how was it? Well, it was a very up and down month. I mean, obviously, it wasn't going to compete with last year's June. I mean, last year had Inside Out 2. Nothing was going to come close to that. That was a given. But still, I mean, June had its hits. Some movies did well. But boy, did it have some serious misses, though, some serious L's, to the point where I just looked at their box office and I was just embarrassed just looking at it. And I'm pretty sure you know what movies I'm talking about there. But yeah, June wasn't like a terrible month or anything, but it definitely could have been better. And now I get to talk about it. So as usual, I'm gonna compare my own personal predictions to what actually happened. And let's get started. So we start with June 6th. We got our four. Did I do five? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did do five. Oh, there it is. The Ritual is not a wide release, even though I thought it was. It doesn't matter. Nobody watched it anyway. um. So yeah, I guess let's get started with these movies. First, we have Dan to Dan Evil Eye. I predicted an opening weekend of like 1 million or so. Final 12 like less than two. Then I looked at its opening day gross, and I was like, "Well, I bombed that prediction." So yeah, end up opening with 3 million, and like with most anime movies, it had a very short life. It wasn't long for this world. Only made like 5.6 million like total, which doesn't sound like a lot, but and to be fair, this movie did quite a bit better than the last Dan to Dan release, which was First Encounter. That was back in September. So yeah, that only made like $1 million. So some really nice growth there. Even though we're not talking about like big box office numbers or anything, but still really nice growth. And for what it is, which I'm not with these anime movies when they're based off like a show. Like this is either one of those where it's just a bunch of episodes like stitched together, or this is like released as like a precursor to like a season. I'm not sure what this is. I'm pretty sure it's the latter, but I could be wrong. But for what it is, it could have been worse, but didn't really set the world on fire. And neither did Dangerous Animals. So opening weekend, I predicted like 1 to 3 million. Found told like 4 to 6. Didn't quite hit that. I mean, I was right with my opening weekend. Hit like 1.5 mil, but it had a very short life, as you can see here. I mean, this always happens to like these like smaller movies that happen to get wide releases when they get like no serious marketing. They basically release for a week and then they disappear and you never see them again. Like it happens all the time. If you haven't noticed. But yeah, this result doesn't really surprise me that much. This movie was never going to set the world on fire, and that's what happened. Now it's time for the first big L of June from the world of John Wick, Ballerina, or just Ballerina. Now, with this, before it came out, I thought this movie could do all right. It's based off, it's a part of the John Wick brand. John Wick is quite the story within itself. That franchise started as a movie that seemingly no one really wanted until like Lionsgate picked it up like mere months, before it was set to release. It started small, but then it grew and grew and grew to the point where it became a straight up blockbuster series. So this, despite being like a spinoff, I thought it would at least do well because of the brand name. So I'm thinking, okay, this might open with like 40, 50 mil. And as the movie got closer, projections started to drop, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good. Then I saw its Thursday numbers and its Friday numbers, and I was like, God damn, this is going terribly. So I ended up predicting only 25 to 30 million opening weekend, and final total of like 60 to 80 million, I think. And it opened with 24.5 million, which is just not good, especially considering its budget is 90 million. It lost to Lilo and Stitch in its third week, which I think says a lot right there. And its legs were real after that. It only made like $57 million domestically, 131 million on a budget of 90 million. Again, bad, just bad. And compared to other John Wick movies, it only outgrossed the first one. Keep in mind that was before the series started to explode in popularity. But it did worse than everyone, after that. Two, three, four. I mean, this made about as much in total as the third movie made its opening weekend, and John Wick 4 made more in 3 days than this movie made total. So that's pretty darn embarrassing. So what went wrong? Well, I know it wasn't a quality issue, but just by like reviews and audience reaction. And I watched the movie. I thought it was pretty good. It's kind of like more of the same, which isn't a bad thing when it comes to John Wick because all the John Wick movies are entertaining. And this is just another one of those. Yeah, good action, just ridiculous action at that. And, it was a good time. But it's pretty easy to see why this movie didn't, perform as well as it should, why it just failed to, pop off. A perfect comparison for this is Furiosa from last year. Because there's quite a bit of similarities between the two, both movies, part of franchises where you have your main characters, your main male characters, with Mad Max and John Wick. Then you have spin-offs where those characters aren't, the main focus. Although here, John Wick is actually in the movie, and Furiosa, Mad Max is nowhere in sight. But John Wick is actually in this movie. He's a minor character, really, but he's in there. They used him in marketing and everything. But still, to basically replace the main character with another one as a spinoff movie, that's a bold, risky move. And sometimes it can work. Spinoffs have worked in the past, but sometimes it just doesn't. And the movie is just seen as, it's just like non-essential. And that's what happened here. And what happened to Furiosa, despite both movies being received well by the public. So yeah, there was that problem. And then there's just the fact that, I guess, you should never assume a franchise is, invulnerable, right? Like it's invincible or something like that. Every franchise, no matter what it is, has faltered at least once. Okay, maybe not all of them, but the big ones that seemed invincible, they faltered. Star Wars was seen as untouchable. Then you have Solo, a Star Wars story, flopping hard. The MCU was seen as untouchable. They've had several flops in the last few years. And it seemed like John Wick seemed untouchable until now. So never assume a franchise is just going to be successful forever. Don't ever assume that. So, yeah, and yeah, like it sucks, really does, but it is what it is, really. And I'm at like Lionsgate. I know they're planning on making a John Wick 5, which feels like the Toy Story 4 of the series, where you're just like, why are we doing this? John Wick died in the fourth one, but they're like, nope, we're bringing him back. He's gonna be resurrected. So I don't know how they're gonna do that, but I know they're planning like a whole big universe with John Wick. They're going all in. After this performance, they should have some second thoughts. Some second thoughts about it, because this performance should raise the alarm a little bit when it comes to those ambitions. But yeah, Ballerina ended up being a flop. It's a shame, but nothing you can really do about that. Then we got the Phoenician Scheme, Wes Anderson's latest flick. I predicted an opening weekend, I think it was like 6 million, and a final total of like 20 mil, something like that. Well, I had a really strong like limited run, and then its opening weekend it did hit 6 million. Its legs after that were meh, not great. It weren't terrible, but not like ideal. It's made like 19 million, 37 million worldwide. I'm not sure how much this movie cost. About to find out. Blah blah blah. What's the budget? 30 mil. Okay, this movie didn't do great either. But you know, I mean, Wes Anderson movies have always been niche. That's been the case for every movie he's made, and this was no exception. Like he has his fans, but they're pretty much the only people who really are gonna like show up in any force, because everyone else just kind of just like like there's all these just. I guess some people might find Wes Anderson's style too a little too quirky. Maybe I don't know. I mean, it's very different from like what you see, in movies nowadays. But yeah, just the movie. Only like the Wes Anderson faithful really cared about it. Everyone else just kind of like ignored it for the most part. So yeah, yeah. But again, Wes Anderson movies, this this tends to happen a lot. And not to mention, this movie had a really iffy audience reaction, so I knew that I was gonna do this movie in. But yeah, I'm not super surprised by this result though. I'm just not. So that was the beginning of June. So as you can see, we very much start on a down, start on a negative, but things would get better the next week on the 13th, thanks to How to Train Your Dragon. And we're about to talk about that. So, live action How to Train Your Dragon. I knew this would be a hit because, well, one, the original animated movie back in 2010 was highly successful, highly beloved, spawned a whole big franchise with sequels and shows and the whole shebang. So obviously brand recognition was going to be on its side. And plus, with the success of the Lilo and Stitch live action remake, which that movie is on track to hit $1 billion, by the way. It's real close to hitting that milestone. I was like, there's no way this movie's going to fail. No way. Like, this is guaranteed to hit. And that's what happened. Like, what a shock, I know. So, opening weekend, I predicted 80 to 90 million. Final total 240 to 270. It opened with 84.6 mil. It's now currently made 239 mil domestically, 560 million worldwide. So yeah, its legs have been, pretty decent. It'll very much hit my final projections. And the movie costs, I think it costs like 150 million, so it's a guaranteed hit. Sure, it's no Lilo and Stitch, but I don't think anyone was expecting this movie to make like $1 billion. That's very much outside it was outside the realm of possibility, but still, it did very well for itself. And I did watch it. Yes, I did watch this movie, mainly because I wanted to see just how similar it was to the original. And the movie, compared to the Lilo and Stitch remake, this is miles ahead when it comes to quality. I mean, this movie doesn't make any stupid, dumb, insulting changes to the source material. Like, it stays true to that original flick. But at the same time, this movie low-key feels worthless because you're better off kind of watching the original movie. Like, if you watch this, you're not gonna get like, it doesn't really change much. I mean, some things change here and there, very minor things, but like the plot and everything still remains the same. But yeah, this feels like just a shot-for-shot remake, and those are kind of worthless. But compared to other live action remakes we've gotten recently, this is definitely one of the better ones. Certainly better than like anything like Disney has cooked up in the last like, I don't know, 5-10 years. So it's got that going for it. And plus you got Gerard Butler reprising his role as Hiccup's dad, both in the animated movie and live action, which I think is hella cool. So yeah, quality wise, this movie, it was fine. It was decent enough, but obviously the original will forever be superior. In terms of box office, it was the big hit of June. and nothing else to say. It was a blockbuster hit. So yeah, yeah. And now we move on to the other movies. Next, we have Materialist from A24. So I predicted an opening weekend of like 12 million, final total of like 30 to 40 million. And what do you know? It basically hit that. I mean, it hit 11.3 million opening weekend. Its legs have been decent, been okay. I felt like this would be one of those movies that would do better during like weekdays instead of weekends. And that's basically what's happened. So currently it's made 35 million. I don't think it's going to go much farther than that. 49 million worldwide on budget. I think it's like 20 mil. Yeah. So definitely a nice little hit. For A24, this is actually one of their biggest hits ever domestically. It's their biggest hit of the year domestically, actually. So yeah, I gotta find it though. Where is it? Should be here. Weird. But it's basically, near the top of like their, highest grossing movies, which is, a good thing because they've been low key kind of struggling a bit, but this movie, was able to get them like out of that, break that little losing streak. So, yeah, it's good for A24. They got a little bit of momentum back. And, yeah. And then, oh, God. First, I can't believe I'm gonna have to be talking about Pedro Pascal for like 3 times in the span of 2 months because I talking about him here, and then literally this weekend I'm talking about him in Eddington. Then the week after that I'm talking about him in Fantastic Four First Step. So yeah, this is just a Pedro Pascal summer, I guess. So can't wait to talk about him in like the next few videos I make. So yeah, but yeah, Materialist. It's a nice little hit. And oh shoot, I forgot to mention the ritual. I completely skipped it. Well, you know what? Let's just go back to it. It's not like I have much to say about it, so I might as well just do this very fast. Ritual. I predicted opening weekend of like 250K to 500K. Final total less than a million, I think. Hit 329K. It disappeared after 2 weeks, pretty much. Only made 500K. Nobody gives a damn. Let's move on. Back to June 13th. Next, we have, well, I guess we could do Unholy Trinity. Unholy Trinity. Basically the same situation as The Ritual, where it released and no one gave a damn about it. Not even a little. So I predicted an opening weekend of like, I think it was, again, maybe 500K, something like that, to a million. Final total like less than two. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Only made like 571K opening weekend, then it just disappeared right after that. Didn't even make $1 million. So that's embarrassing. And nothing else to say. Let's move on. I know I'm kind of speeding through some of these, but there really is nothing to say about some of these movies. There really isn't. Next, and then we got Life of Chuck here, which I believe opening weekend, I said 1 to 2 million, and a final total by 3 to 5 million. Well, open to 2.3 million, and now it's made 6.3 million. So that's a bit of a yikes, especially this is from Neon, and the fact that this is from like Mike Flanagan is based off a short story by Stephen King, but no one really cared. Not no, there was like no serious energy surround this movie. No one was like that hyped for it, and that reflects in its box office. So yeah, it just I don't know. Maybe it'll find like a life for itself on streaming. It just might. It might find like itself a cult following later on. But yeah, in theaters, it just did not land. The audience just didn't really show up, and that's the end of that. Yeah, that was June 13th. So yeah, so we started on a down, then we had an up. Now we gotta do another down again because June 20th, it was ugh. Okay, but the only like real positive that weekend, 28 years later. This was a movie I was very hyped about because the trailer I thought was amazing. It sold me instantly. It made this one of the movies like I needed to see most in 2025. I even made this poster my wallpaper on my phone for a few months. That's how hyped I was for it. And I saw reviews for it. I was like, okay, this movie might pop off. This movie has a lot of momentum. And you know, okay, I lost my train of thought. Anywho, so opening weekend, I was thinking this could really like, go big and make open like 40, 50 million, something like that. And the preview numbers kind of tricked me into believing that would be a reality because I had a preview number of 5.8 million. And I was like, wow, that's really impressive. But then I remembered that Thursday was Juneteenth, and Juneteenth it had an impact on the box office. A lot of movies box office did go up because Juneteenth is a federal holiday, so you know that's an advantage for the movies. But then I saw its Friday numbers. I was like, oh, well, never mind. So I ended up predicting 30 million opening weekend. I found told like 60 to 90 million, and that's pretty much what happened. So it's just over 30 million. Had a rough second weekend, but was able to kind of recover after that. It's currently made 65 million domestically. It might squeak past 70 million if it's lucky. It's made like 138 million on a budget of 60 mil, so that's not a terrible result. No, but it's not as good as I thought it would. As I thought it would do. And I did watch it, and boy, this movie was a very strange experience. It did not go the way I thought it would at all. Not even a little. It was just like from like an editing standpoint, from like a storyline standpoint, it was very bizarre, very not of the norm, very unusual. There were like some cool kills though, where it did like a 360 shot of like zombies getting like, killed. That was pretty cool. And like the ending just baffled me. It's been a long time since I've been like that so baffled at an ending where I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? But it happened here. I'm not gonna spoil it, but yeah, it was very out of left field. And I was just sitting there just in disbelief the whole time. But I didn't hate the movie. It was just a very strange experience. That's all I can say. Like I'm not honestly, I don't how I feel about this is kind of like how I felt about Matrix Revolutions, where I'm not sure how to feel about it. I'm not sure whether I truly like it or dislike it. But it was a weird time. But hey, I will accept weird over boring any day. Like I will accept this over something like Jurassic World Rebirth any day. Okay. So yeah, that's my thoughts on 28 years later. But from a box office perspective, it did decent. I think a sequel is going to be coming out in January, The Bone Temple. We'll see how that does, and that movie and whatever happens with that movie, that'll determine if they finish like the trilogy they want to do. Because that second movie's already been filmed, you might as well release it. So yeah, we'll see what happens to Bone Temple in January. But 28 years later, box office wise, considering it's been like so long since 28 weeks later, so long that 28 months later just couldn't even exist. It did all right. It just did all right. But I was hoping it would do a little better, but still, it did fine at the end of the day. Then we got Bride Hard, which there's not even any box office to talk about. Even though I know numbers exist out there, but on the numbers it just doesn't. So that's weird. So, but I'll look it up off screen. I should be able to find it pretty easily. Bride Hard. Let me see. I'll find it. Blah 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 blah. Looking at an article where da 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 da. Trying to find it. I keep scrolling down. God, where is it? It just won't appear. There it is. There it is. I see. It only opened with like 932K, which, yeah, I think I predicted an open win of like, I think it was like $1 million, and a final total of like two something $1 million. There's no way this hit $2 million. So nobody watched this movie. Not surprising. Reviews were horrible. Had no marketing. It was just thrown out there, and it didn't even make a buck. It only really made pennies instead of a buck. So yeah, not surprised about this. The fact that no one watched it. Now we have Elio, without a doubt the biggest bomb of the summer so far, and it's not even close. All right, so this movie, I knew for a very long time it wasn't gonna do well. I always had that feeling that this movie was just circling the drain because Pixar in the last few years, you know, ever since like the 2020s have started, it's been a struggle for them. Three of their movies went straight to Disney Plus. They were dumped there because of COVID related reasons. And what that did was kind of like train audiences into just waiting for Disney Plus, waiting for the movies to come to Disney Plus instead of going to the theater. And that was part of the reason why Lightyear was such a bomb. Elemental had a horrible opening, but was able to save itself in the end, barely. But still, like, it shouldn't have to be like that. But last year, though, you had Inside Out 2 become Pixar's biggest hit ever, something I never would have predicted. So you would think that would help Elio just a little bit. No, no. I mean, the thing with this movie is that it was supposed to come out last year, first of all, but then it got delayed to this year. So that was already a worrying sign. And then just like the marketing and everything, like I saw like a bunch of trailers for this movie like in theater. Not once was I like, damn, okay, this looks great. I was just like, whatever. Like just a hard shoulder shrug. Like it never pulled me in. It never got me to care. And if you don't do that, you failed at your job. And that was basically the case for this movie. For like a lot of people, like people just didn't really gravitate towards the movie. Like maybe it was because of the plot, the fact young boy gets goes to space and deals with aliens. Like it just that plot just didn't like draw people in, or just the fact that some people just didn't like the art style. The term bean mouth has been used when it comes to this movie's art style. It doesn't help that movies like Luca and Turning Red have like a similar art style. And I heard it was like in a YouTube comment, someone compared this movie's art style to a Grubhub ad. I was like, God damn, that's a brutal comparison. Like, geez, they were not holding back. And just like the fact that it felt like Disney just didn't give a damn about it. It felt like they spent all their money on Lilo and Stitch and are just like, oh damn, we got Elio. Whatever. They just didn't care. They just kind of neglected it. And as a result, what happened. So I ended up predicting an opening weekend of like 22 to 20. I think it was like, I don't even know if I really did a prediction for it because I felt like it wasn't necessary because I knew this movie was going to die. But I guess if I had to make a proper prediction, I was thinking maybe I was hoping it would hit maybe the 30s, but ended up making like, but I decided to do like 20, 25 million final total. Like, I guess the final total would have been 80 mil, something like that. Well, it only opened with 20.8 million, and that's a record for a Pixar movie. But it's the record you never want to have. It's a record you don't want to be associated with, because this is by far and away the worst opening ever for a Pixar movie. So I'm about to show you right here. Opening weekend. So Inside Out 2 last year, the second best. Then we go down, all the way down to the bottom, not counting Bugs Life and Toy Story 2, because those had like specialty opening weekend. Really, their opening weekend, they had like a week of limited release and limited theaters, and then they had their wide releases like afterwards. So I'm not counting those. But Elio is very much at the bottom here. Did worse than the first Toy Story, their first movie, which was fucking 30 years ago. Like, what does that say? Seriously. Did worse than Elemental, Onward, Good Dinosaur. Like, shit. It's just awful. Now, Onward, I'll give that a pass because of, real life circumstances killing its box office. But even so, the fact that Elio's like box office hasn't even matched that worldwide, that's embarrassing, dude. That is downright humiliating. So yeah, only up like 20.8 million. It did not pull an Elemental. I mean, its legs haven't been too bad, but it don't matter. This movie's dead. It's game over. So it's only made like 63 million domestically, 117 million worldwide. There have been more than a few Pixar movies that have opened better than that 63 million. And some of them weren't movies that were released like years and years ago. Like movies like Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, and Up, and, Brave, and stuff like that. So, yeah, these results, awful. It's just awful. And it makes me very worried about the future of Pixar because, it's very clear they can't really deliver with their original movies anymore. Like, they haven't had an original hit since Coco, and that was back in 2017. Ever since then, the only thing that's really popping off for them has been sequels. And that was never more apparent than last year when Inside Out 2 became their biggest hit. So, I feel like that might lead to just a situation where, they put even more emphasis on sequels and less emphasis on original ideas. And that's bleak. But I'm really hoping that's not the case. I mean, I know they have some projects coming up. I don't know about that movie Hoppers. I feel like that might be a flop too. But what an upcoming movie, actually, I don't think I ever talked about it before, but I do want to mention it. Gato. People are actually low-key kind of hyped for that because they're actually using like a different animation style. A style like they haven't really dove into yet. And people are like, okay, finally, Pixar's doing something different because, in this day and age of animation, I mean, ever since like Spider-Verse came out, that kind of changed everything where people are like, it's okay to like do your own thing, be stylized, be creative. Like, you don't have to strive for realism. You don't have to strive for looking like the absolute best, like the most detailed, the most, and all that. You can just do your own thing. That's what Spider-Verse has taught the industry. And that's why we have movies like Puss in Boots' Last Wish and Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem and other movies, like Wild Robot and like The Bad Guys with all these cool animation styles to them. But Pixar, they just never really dove into that until like with Gato, that's going to be coming out in like 2 years. So yeah, hopefully with that changes Pixar's fate. But they got Toy Story 5 next year, which should make them money, even though it really shouldn't exist at all. I mean, it's more unnecessary than Toy Story 4, and that's saying something. But it should at least, help help them regain all the lost revenue from Elio. At least help people keep their jobs at the very least. But yeah, Elio, huge bomb, about as big as a bomb. I think it's. I'm not sure which one is the worst bomb. This or Snow White. Probably Snow White because at least this movie didn't have to deal with the shit Snow White had to deal with all the never-ending controversies around that. But yeah, Elio, biggest bomb of the summer. It's not even like a competition there. So that was June 20th. Not a great week for movies. And now finally June 27th. We have a high and a low at the same time. First, the high. F1 the movie, or just F1. So, this right here is an Apple movie. As you know, Apple has had a really bad time when it comes to movies. Every movie they've released theatrically in the last 2 years has been a dud. In terms of box office. I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, they didn't make the money they definitely should have. And then last year, Argyle was a straight up bomb, and Fly Me to the Moon did even worse, and it led to Wolves. That movie was supposed to be a wide release, but then Apple, they got cold feet, and they just said, nope, we are just not doing that. It's going to Apple TV Plus, which resulted in the sequel getting canceled. And it resulted in, I think, John Watts saying, he just couldn't trust Apple anymore. So, yeah, a lot of bad PR going on there. So I felt like with this, I'm just like, Apple, come on. What are you doing? But, I noticed, before this movie released, it was getting momentum. Reviews were pouring in. They were really good. People were actually, kind of hyped for the movie. And I was like, okay, maybe this won't share the fate of all those other Apple movies. So I ended up predicting an opening weekend of 55 million, final total 150 to 200 million, and it opened with 57 million, which destroys all the other Apple movies. It's not even close. And I'm just like, wow, Apple's finally got a hit on their hands. And all it took was, Brad Pitt and some F1 F1 race cars is all it took. They managed to make a movie that, a blockbuster movie that appealed to the masses. So yeah, and so far it's made 136 million domestically. It will no doubt shoot past the 150 million mark domestically. It will be one of the highest performing movies of the summer. It's one of the highest performing movies of the year domestically. So, obviously it's a big win for Apple in terms of the PR department. I mean, sure, box office wise, 393 million. I think the budget was two. I keep seeing different numbers: 200, 300, 250. I don't know what it is. I really don't know. It's somewhere in that range. But it is one of the highest grossing movies of the year, so it's got that going for it. And, for Warner Brothers, besides what Apple, these movies, the box office, they say that it doesn't really matter that much because, for them, it's literally just a drop in the bucket because they have, $3 trillion? That's how much they're worth? So yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars doesn't really matter to them. But from a PR perspective, this is definitely a win. This is a win they needed badly. And it makes them go, okay, maybe we can, release movies. Maybe we can release movies people will actually watch. Maybe we can do it. And I did watch this movie, and I thought it was really good. The racing, I thought that was rather exhilarating, especially how they, did it basically in first person. It was just a good blockbuster flick that, had that, very much a blockbuster charm to it. It felt more, it felt, I'm trying to think of the right words. It just, I guess it had a better vibe compared to other summer movies I've seen, Lilo and Stitch and Jurassic World Rebirth, where this movie, it felt good to watch it. It felt I was like, hell yeah, this is great. Well, if it wasn't just like, why am I here? Why am I watching this? So yeah, F1 is a pretty darn good flick, and I'm glad it was able to find like a significant audience. So yeah, F1 definitely the second big hit of June. And then time for another big old miss. Megan 2.0. What in the hell happened here? Like, God. So you probably been seeing like a lot of articles about Megan 2.0 being a total dud. And the thing is, I would have never expected that because the first Megan was a big hit. It was fueled by a viral marketing campaign because of Megan's, iconic dance. That turned a lot of people's heads, including mine. That made me go, okay, this is something I need to experience in the theater. So I watched it. It ended up being an actual like, really good flick, and it was a big hit because of that. So naturally, you make a sequel. If a sequel felt like a slam dunk, in theory, I'm like, how could it go wrong? But then problems start popping up. With how what the sequel was gonna do. But even still, like projections for it, like they were, I think it started like at 30 mil, but then they dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped to the point where I was just like shaking my head. I was just like looking at the numbers. I was just like, what the hell is going on? It was just like Ballerina all over again, except even worse. So I end up predicting an opening weekend of like 10 million, final total of like 20 to 25 million. It hit 10 million, but that's not something I wanted to see happen. And so far it's made 22 million domestically. I don't see it getting much farther than that. So, and only 36 million on a budget of 25 million. So, absolutely embarrassing. And just to really show off just how awful this performance is, let's look at Megan 1. Look at the numbers. Look at the difference. 30 million opening weekend, 10 million opening weekend. 95 million total, 22 million total. 181 million worldwide, 36 million worldwide. Look at that gap. That's a big gap in box office right there between the first and the second movie. A big old drop off. Not a normal drop off either for a sequel. Like if this opened with like 20 million and made like 50 to 60 million, I'd be like, okay, that's not terrible. I mean, it's not great, but it could have been worse. But this, make it not even a fourth of the original. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's it costs even more to make? That just makes it all just just more embarrassing. And the thing, I think I mentioned this in my prediction video from Megan 2. Megan 2.0 opening weekend was less than what the first movie made, its opening day. And keep in mind, the first movie came out in January. It was the first movie of 2023. And still did like infinitely better than Megan 2.0, which had a prime summer release date. So what happened? What killed this movie? Well, I know exactly what killed this movie. This movie made a fatal error in changing the genre. Because you see, the first Megan was like this campy horror flick, and that's why people liked it. The sequel decided to go in a different direction. Instead of being like a campy horror flick, it basically became a sci-fi action flick. And all that did was just alienate people who liked the first movie. It literally pulled a Joker 2, where Joker 1 is like this, psychological flick, and people, dug it. And it made $1 billion. But then the sequel, they were like, you know what we should do? Let's make it a musical. The fans will love that. Spoiler alert, they hated it. And the movie ended up being a complete disaster. That's what happened here. When you make a sequel, don't change the genre. That's a terrible idea. It's never gonna go well. I mean, sure, you can change maybe the plot, characters, setting. Don't change the genre. That you do that, you are asking for trouble. You are signing a death warrant. So don't Don't do that. So that was the big thing, is the fact that it changed genres. That was like the main reason why it died. And there's also the fact that Blumhouse has just had a terrible time recently. They haven't had a real strong hit since Five Nights at Freddy's, and that was 2 years ago. Like ever since then, every single one of those movies, like at some do like okay at best, but just horrible at worst. In 2025, it's just been brutal for them. Like Wolfman, Woman in the Yard, Drop, and now this all tanked. And this was the worst one because people assumed it would be a hit. So the fact that this tanked, I mean, what does that mean for Black Phone 2? What does that mean for Five Nights at Freddy's 2? What does that mean for Blumhouse, period? Like, like have horror fans just given up on them? Have they abandoned them? Like, are they cursed? like, you know, like what's going on? Is it just a quality issue? There's just a lot of negativity surrounding the Blumhouse brand. You know, like that the name of Blumhouse at this point is become box office poison. I am 100% convinced of that, especially after what happened with this. But who knows? Maybe Black Phone 2 can fix that. Maybe Five Nights at Freddy's 2 can fix that. Time will tell. But what's really awkward about the situation, I didn't mention this before, is that this movie actually has a spin-off planned for January. Soulmate. It's already been filmed and everything, so you can't cancel it. But like, how do you even release a spin-off after Megan 2.0 flopped the way it did? How do you do that? Well, I guess the MCU can release flops. Yeah, well, they have no choice because they make several movies like at once. So after like even if one of their movies flops, they gotta release the next one because that's just how it works. But here it's just a really awkward situation. So Soulmate, who knows how that's gonna do? Maybe it'll pull off a miracle and be like The Nun, where The Nun ended up being like the most successful Conjuring movie. Maybe it could do that, or maybe it'll bomb even worse than Megan 2.0. Who knows? We'll find out in January. But yeah, Megan 2.0, big old miss. And I watched the movie, and yeah, it's very easy to see why people just didn't. It just the movie. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. I was hoping for a goofier movie compared to the first one, just pure insanity, and it didn't really give me that. The movie was just so weirdly tame, and it kind of like didn't really succeed at anything. It didn't really succeed as an action movie. It didn't really succeed as a horror flick. It didn't really succeed as like an AI movie. It didn't really succeed at anything. It was just a movie where I just sat there and I was just like, well, I sure watched that. Time to forget about it in like 24 hours. But I will say Megan, she was the best part of this movie. She made the movie watchable for me, with her attitude. She was an AI with attitude. And, I like her for that. But yeah, the movie was a miss. Its box office was a miss. And yeah, don't ever expect a Megan 3.0. That's just nah, no. And that's it for June. Yeah, as you can see, very up and down month. Now we're in the middle of July. Box office wise, July's doing pretty good. I mean, Jurassic World Rebirth has done all right. Superman had a strong opening this weekend. The rest of the month, I'm not sure though. Eddington, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Smurfs. I'm not sure how any of those are gonna do. I feel like they could all do decent, but they could all do terrible at the same time. Like, I don't know. And then Fantastic Four First Steps. After, I feel like it should realistically do better than Thunderbolts and Brave New World because it feels like a new thing. Because the Fantastic Four back on the big screen for the first time in like 10 years. I mean, I'm looking forward to the movie, but I'm not sure how it will perform though. So we'll see come July 25th. And there's House of Eden, but nobody's watching that. Nobody cares. But yeah, that's July. So Yeah, but that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this? I got playlists on the homepage, all previous prediction videos, recap videos I made on the channel. You want to watch any of the recap videos I made this year or the past few years, you can go right ahead. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. Pretty much every movie I covered here, I made a prediction video for. So if you want to watch any of those videos, you can go right ahead. It's also the canceled series where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I believe like it's been a little over a year since I ended the canceled series, and do I regret it? No, not really. I was burned out. I wanted that series to end. I thought hitting 250 felt right. Although there is a slight regret I have that the fact that I probably should have made a video on Shrek 5 being announced, but too late for that. I'll talk about Shrek 5 when I make my prediction video for it like next year. But yeah, if you want to watch the canceled series, all 250 episodes, you want to binge the whole thing from beginning to end, I highly suggest you do that, so go do it. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.